Ted Hughes said that the only capital he had for his work as an author was his own life. His published writings might be described as the authorised version of the story, the life transformed and made authorial. His unpublished writings, drafts, sketches, abortive projects, journals, letters, are the place where he showed his workings. He kept them for posterity in their millions of words, most of which have now been made available to the public. The archive is where he is unauthored, turned back from famous poet, the title of one of his early poems, to mortal being. Together with the memories of those who knew and loved him, the archive reveals that the way he lived his life was authorised not by social convention or by upbringing, but by his passions, his mental landscape, and his unwavering sense of vocation. His was an unauthorised life, and so is my book. Ted Hughes is one of the 2 or 3 greatest poets of the 20th century. So it was an extraordinary privilege to spend 5 years in the archives and reading all his work, writing the story of his life, and exploring how he transformed an amazing life, controversial one, into an extraordinary body of poems, stories, and journals and letters as well. I don't think there's any better example of a body of work that shows us a literary genius in the process of creation. And that's what I've tried to capture in my biography. In a way, it's a very sad life story, because when Ted Hughes met Sylvia Plath, it was just as his poetry was beginning to reach maturity, and so was hers. And through their loving, their living together, their working together, their sharing of their work, there was this explosion of creativity. His first 2 books, in many ways his greatest volumes, The Hawk in the Rain and Lupercal, were written in close collaboration with Sylvia. They were the result of this amazingly creative literary marriage. Ironically, Sylvia's work reached its highest pitch in the winter of 1962 to 63, after she and Ted had separated. And he was then in the extraordinary position of both being a poet himself, but also being the curator and the editor of his late wife's work. And he recognised that she was the greatest American poet, certainly, he said, since Emily Dickinson in the 19th century, perhaps ever. And he devoted many, many years to ensuring that her work reached print and that her work was properly appreciated. But the combination of that with the hostility that greeted him because of her death and his own feelings of guilt and sorrow meant that for many years his work was blocked. One of my big discoveries in the archive was that for nearly 30 years, perhaps even more, he was writing the poems about his life with Sylvia and those desperately sad last weeks, which he didn't publish until 1998, the last year of his life. He published them as birthday letters, the fastest selling, biggest selling volume in the history of English poetry. But after he published them, he wrote this deeply poignant diary entry in which he says, "It's too late. I feel a great sense of liberation, and I feel that now my work can move to a new place. But for all those years in between, I was messing around in the foothills. I wasn't addressing the real thing. If only he had had the courage to publish the Sylvia poems earlier, who knows to what new horizon his own work would have developed. Too late, the saddest words in the English language. Within 8 months of publishing that collection, he was dead." The absolute central ambition of my book is to bring new readers to his work, to widen the audience for this extraordinary body of poetry and prose, to keep Ted Hughes's name and achievement alive for future generations.